ends one way.
They'll kill you all.
Why not take your chances in a prison cell?
Alright, I'm coming out.
My lord, I have a report.
Speak.
Our latest assassination attempt on Lady Nocturne has failed.
I can see stronger measures are needed. Begin phase 2.
If you like our content, we'd appreciate if you'd like, subscribe, and get notifications. Help us extend our reach by sharing our video content. And if you want to help us beat the algorithm, also leave us a comment on some of our videos.
Let's see. All right, I didn't fuck this one up. Outstanding. All right. What's up, fam of Liberty? It's admin Tim and admin Matt. We're going to be doing the live stream with the vice presidential debate as soon as I can figure out what the fuck it is.
Links in the chat.
The links in the chat. What, the admin chat?
Yeah, links in the admin chat.
Oh, let me pull that up. Yeah. Good job, everybody.
Look at the staff team coming through.
Fuck yeah. Best team ever. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just fucking present the screen. Let's see, which one do we want? We want to watch live.
Are we going to have audio on here? Okay, perfect. I'm going to put the audio in my background.
Yeah, we're uncensored. So
News special live from CBS News headquarters in New York. America
live from New York.
The vice presidential debate.
It's Taco Tuesday Night Live.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you.
I'm sure they're getting to us.
Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator JD Vance.
No handshake this time.
Our comments are better. Oh, are they already prepped and ready to go?
I'm Margaret.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Okay, to have a thoughtful and civil debate. These are the rules that both
they already screwed up capturing it. It shows the last half second
one
of it.
candidate who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points.
All right, so I heard that JD Vance tends to laugh, this nervous laugh whenever he knows he's off guard and he doesn't have anything to say. So I'm going to drink.
Making a drink in the game?
I don't know if it's going to be water or gin and tonic. It depends on what I got.
To mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum. We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns. The stage is set. Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago, a nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness
using
that
his
is
comments
able to be able
against
to
him.
draw on the
I like
coalitions
it.
to bring them together.
Cheers, Star Major.
Understanding
The
that our allies
the
matter.
blinking
When
is getting more
our
intense.
allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards
You see it,
North
right?
Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President said today is, we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family.
We know who you are, couch fucker. Shut up.
For periods of her life. My
Yeah, just know how to
grandmother
order a
required
fucking
Social Security
donut.
help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets.
Fucking dog walk Trump whenever he
They
wanted
use that
to.
money for. They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon.
The black guy had put that project together,
leadership.
so he needed to get
And
rid
when
of it.
Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard
he's got the
diplomacy of Donald
receipts.
Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as
tucked
headache.
tail and ran
Look,
away.
Our allies
is what Trump
understand
did.
that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or
Never
where it
mind
makes
that
sense to him.
he,
Steady
surrendered in
leadership like
Syria,
you witnessed
surrendered
today,
to the
like you
Taliban in
witnessed in
Afghanistan.
April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our
Tell me
coalition
where he
is
was tough.
strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal.
Oh,
Recently
fact check,
said,
bitch.
Just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize
They
Donald Trump's
also attacked
tweets,
them during
but
the Trump
effective,
administration
smart
too. But
diplomacy,
we're going to pretend
peace
those
through
attacks
strength
didn't happen.
is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time? I'm 40 years old. When was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change?
Science. We don't do
science. Let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph
unfolded in
of
Appalachia,
2
where you're not from,
on a roof
bitch,
with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job. And I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. And Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say, Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What has Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water,
jobs in the
best
United
thing
States.
to do is to double down and
Meanwhile,
invest in American workers,
under Biden,
in the
we had the
American
largest
people, and
growth of manufacturing jobs
exactly the opposite.
in decades. But, don't let the facts get in the way of Vance's rant.
Close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane. And my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together. So all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there that we recover. But we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax, and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing.
Which we're doing
so clearly,
more of
Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by the climate.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said, again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives in Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign, and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that. And an all above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies.
Talk about the Haitians, Jethro,
deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 20, 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants.
Number has gone
about
up
a million of
every
those
damn time
people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficking. Some of them
administration lost those kids, JD?
Some of them have been used as drug trafficking
Who
mules.
separated them from their families, JD? Talk about that.
In this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow
Most
Americans.
of those kids were separated between 2017 and 2020.
Do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis at this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio. But there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the attorney general of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no.
There we go.
It gives him a campaign issue. It gives him what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 90 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show
didn't answer the question, by the way.
Of Americans, more than 50% support mass deportations.
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield.
Here we
The
go.
Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement?
It's not an opinion, that's a
First of all,
fact.
the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed, you've got hospitals that are overwhelmed, you have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's
How about the American citizens that are from Haiti originally
I agree with
and
you.
are U.S. citizens now? How about their lives?
Kamala Harris
You're willing to
Senator,
throw
your
away?
time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us, you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
We're going to
because
turn out of the economy.
Shut up, JD Bowman, you fuckbag.
A fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say
I would
what's
fact
actually
check
going
you
on.
and say there's
So there's an
casting
application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years.
Thank you, Senator.
Facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank you,
our own
Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal
And
process. We have so much
Harris
to get
opened up
to,
that
Senator.
pathway.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much-
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
We
CBP
want to have
One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret. The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan, so let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota, 12% more houses in Minneapolis. Prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it. It would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best. More people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it.
My cat
because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies, and what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%, open the American border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now, not when asking for.
Oh man, if only she was president, right?
Gave her 3.5 years ago.
Once again,
and the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plan. They have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom. Because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle
The
class?
stock market is the only metric. Was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, You don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, in the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look,
and they eat
so
14 eggs a day.
That we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts.
I don't even eat
We're going to stop it by
14 eggs.
listening
Arnold
to common sense
Schwarzenegger,
and
when he was
wisdom,
going from his
which is what Donald
university,
Trump
he
doesn't know.
Senator,
14 eggs a day.
Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust
I'm
Donald Trump on the
lactose
economy more.
up the chimney.
If you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the
No, that's a gross generalization.
So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better.
Wasn't this guy middle class?
We can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric, but being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate, Donald Trump, unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments.
I feel like
and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020.
But
the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president. Writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate.
The best
and you've
thing
shifted
Walz
many of your
on
policy
is
stances to align with
he arrived in China
you
a
become
different
vice
month.
president. Why should Americans
that's the
trust
big lie.
that
That's
you will
the big
give
gotcha.
Donald Trump the advice?
That's true. It's kind of a weak gotcha.
And not just the advice he wants to hear.
Yeah,
you have
but
2
if
minutes.
you go back,
well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open, and sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be
good
fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration in the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Trump
Senator,
has
your
proposed
time is up.
20% across
Nora?
the board.
Thank you.
It is going to be a
Now to the issue
massive
of reproductive rights.
cost increase to
Governor
Americans.
Walz, after Roe versus Wade was
It's not the same
overturned,
as a
you
couple
signed a
of
bill
specific
into
industry
law
terms.
that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade. 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's
There we
going
go.
to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is
hard not to say Washington, I'm telling you.
Maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world.
Yeah.
This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that
he said he
felt
loves
like
another
if she
woman
hadn't had
besides
an
his wife.
abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography. There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not. Though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance.
So
but Nora,
whatever.
You know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on
why
this.
Why did you vote for shit that
but as I read the Minnesota law,
is this that magical thinking thing?
Statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, whether you're pro-choice or
doesn't need to be in there because you can't kill a baby.
Barbaric, and that's why I use that word. Some of what we've seen. Do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. Please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
This is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all. What was I wrong with that, Governor? Please, what was that wrong? Not the way the law is written. Look, I've given this on a lot of things, getting involved, getting engaged. That's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and get women to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business. On this, things work best when Roe versus Wade was in place.
Own business.
When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So yeah, fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on. We're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
Oh, we're taking a commercial break.
Also, for the record, 93% of all abortions are in the first term. So this whole we've got to stop all these ninth month abortions. It's a complete load of shit.
The reason
the ones
you
that are
have
happening there are emergencies. They are.
Yes, it's because you have a problem and you're getting septic. It's because you've had a miscarriage and it's not resolving on its own. Or
you've had a rupture, or
right. It's something that's bad that's happened, right? And it's because the pregnancy could be viable if nothing bad had happened, but something bad did happen, and you have to have the same procedure regardless. You have a D&C. It's just a lot of people who don't know how things work having a knee-jerk reaction.
It's a narrative that they want to push. They want to say, "Oh no, I wouldn't interfere," but I have to worry about these millions of late-term abortions.
And they call it like on demand. On demand, you could just
because they want to make it,
and then suddenly in the ninth month you decide, no, that's not a thing. That has not happened.
Because they can't win on the position on the facts. They need to invent a straw man to attack. That is the only way they can.
Yes, because that's not true, and that's not what people's experience is. Using abortion as birth control is not really a thing here, unless we start restricting birth control to the point that they are using it, like in the former USSR. They totally did, because they didn't have birth control. And many, many, many women in the former Soviet Union lost their fertility for their life. They never could have kids because they were using abortion like birth control. So this is what happens. People will find a way. And it's a necessary evil. Nobody likes it, but that's the way things are. You have to have it so that you can have those choices. And he didn't, and Vance didn't talk about any way other than making like some vague reference to childcare, that he was going to help women who have kids once they're born. Because they're not planning on helping women who have kids after they're born in any other way. Okay, you have a bunch of kids now. Have fun.
Looks like Radish doesn't like me showing off my cat, so I'm gonna put Mikey in the bathroom so we don't offend his fucking sensibilities.
But they don't rather see the cat.
I don't know. Where is your dog? Eating the camera.
Would you rather? I just want to show the cat because I don't want to see them to see me. My cat left.
Oh man, it's gaming for professionalism. You're at the wrong spot, man.
This dude's talking about fucking professional. Bro, have you seen our fucking YouTube videos? What's professional about me calling someone a fucking ass clown, cockface, dick sucker? Jesus Christ. Do you know who the fuck you are watching right now? Holy shit, bro.
Oh, dear.
Professionalism. Fuck you. How about that? Suck my fucking dick. How about that? Is that professional enough for you? Oh, I'm sorry. Engulf on my penile projectile. There you go. Professionalism. Go watch the fucking debate on your own channel, you shitbag.
Who cares what we're showing on our camera? You can see the screen of the debate.
They're running commentary during the debate aren't being professional. Motherfucker, this is the Sons of Liberty. Have you not seen a goddamn video we've ever fucking put out? Holy shit, bro. I'm a fucking ex-Army NCO. Every fucking word is fuck. Fuck, 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 shit, cunt, ass. It's back on. Everybody shush.
Welcome back to the CBS News vice presidential debate. We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. the leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator
All right, here we
Vance,
go, asshole.
you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make decisions. I think
Boy,
in
were
some
you
cases-
not paying attention?
In some cases, the answer is going to be no, and the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot
he
of
knows how
parents,
to
we
shoot
send
a
our kids
gun.
to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this
What
terrible
could
stuff.
we do?
And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me, worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border,
I don't think that's
we've seen a
true,
massive
dude.
influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number,
I don't
the
think
amount
that's
of illegal guns in
true.
our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I
Thoughts
say
and
this
prayers
not loving
for
the answer,
school.
because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to
He
make
and
the
Greg
doors
Abbott.
better.
It's
We
the
have to
Greg
make the
Abbott
doors
school
stronger.
of thought.
We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to
Fences.
increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland is, okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it's only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues, making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns, and there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Hearst campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the Vice President is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, one of the, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens? If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill, one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it. If a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive.
They're very low right now,
If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer where? Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening
in the middle
up
of
building
nowhere
in this
in
country.
Wyoming?
We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. Blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris.
Probably lower income
We are a
rents.
country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things.
Because they
wants
care
to
about
throw
the
people
environment?
in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local. Many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell.
Only 15 minutes left.
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, I have concepts of a plan. Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
This should be good.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. I think it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. I think that's an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done, but when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do, but I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
No, he didn't.
All right, here's where being an old
I didn't have a fucking plan in
I
2016.
was
He
there
didn't do
at
shit.
the creation
He didn't
of
earn
the
he had the
ACA.
right then.
And the
when he
reason
got
it was
elected.
so important is I
right
come
now.
from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare.
This is
And so
hilarious.
what
he just
I
goes
know
on
is
about
under
how great
Kamala Harris,
Minnesota is.
more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
He just said his
Governor,
own
did
relatives
enrollment
could
under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
That's the ACA
It's higher
they
now
were
that
affording.
we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then
so
what
you
happens
think the individual mandate's a good idea?
You shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret?
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret?
Let's talk about families in
Pendejo.
America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start. The family works better. They stay in their employers. We get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota, and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue. Those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some cases, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with childcare. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide childcare in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote childcare because look, it is unacceptable. And, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on child care as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, child care options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the child care shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortages, we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Because it pays.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's $5,000 or $6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarship types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy is growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. What President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that, to me, is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
And when he said they should fight like hell.
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate. I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he did. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret? Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country.
Only because his attempt to overturn
after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he
Hashtag thoughts and prayers.
We have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, but we let the government
and if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy it.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance, I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement. This is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala
Oh,
Harris
won't answer.
censor Americans?
Oh, you fumbled the ball, you bitch!
COVID situation.
You cock.
That is
You
a damning
fucking
non-answer.
wet
It's a
slut
damning non-answer for
shit
you to not talk
fuck.
about censorship.
I'm
Obviously,
putting
Donald
it down
Trump
right
is
now.
trying to deal with
Amazing
problems in
you are.
2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
It is your First Amendment right to
That's the
spread
Supreme Court test.
misinformation.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater.
Gotcha.
You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the governor
masks.
does
That's
have the
not
floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah.
It goes back to that scientist.
I don't run
thing.
Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate continues.
I'm going to mute this. I don't want anybody to feel that we're being unprofessional talking during a commercial break. If that dude
Should I
is still
show my
watching,
butt
I don't
again?
think that he is. I think he pieced out when I fucking went off on a tangent. But anyway,
it's wild for him to try to equate like COVID misinformation being stopped with.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a violent overthrow of the
they were
government.
straight up
perfectly
like,
fine. They're
"No, are
basically
you
the
going to
same
have
thing.
another inspection if you lose?" And he's like, "Well, I'm happy to have a conversation about having a conversation about what actually happened. We have alternative facts, or
It's not
I don't
exactly
even know.
yelling fire
There's
in
no
a
fucking
crowded
conversation.
theater.
It
Oh
happens.
my god, dude!
It's
Just
ridiculous.
fucking
So
say
ridiculous.
yes or no, you stupid shit. Don't fucking prevaricate and not answer.
Did he lose or not?
Did he lose
I thought
or
he
not?
was
No,
going to
he
pop
didn't
up and
lose.
say
Okay,
no.
well, at least you stood by for
his
your
vote.
convictions.
Some other crazy ass story. I really didn't think he was going to say
Fucking
immigrants
on
like
camera
eating
and said
houses
they
or something
lost.
next. It's-
The fucking white
yeah, he's a
supremacists are
kitty
mad.
cat.
Like, yeah, the cat. The cat is climbing up the back of my computer chair, and he's got a little catnip toy right off to the side over here on the ground. It's one of those little rings with like the cardboard that's full of catnip, and this cat is fucking more hopped up than I am.
Oh yeah. He gets the zoomies from it.
All of a sudden, he's like, "Look at all the stuff on the desk. I'm gonna have some fun." And I'm like, "No, bro, it's almost 11 p.m. Let's not." Oh, I shouldn't have.
He's
smoked
gonna
so
be
much.
big like my cat. It's enormous. He's gonna be like that. Just watch. He's gonna be chubby.
What is it? Did I just see KKK on the child on the fucking commercial? That could be.
Unbelievable. I really think Vance is going to pivot back and claim that, the poor migrants that are coming across the Mexican border are buying up the $500,000 houses that are across like upstate Vermont, right? That's really what's happening to them.
What? Well, Walz he's being the nice guy every single time, almost every single time. Most of the time, he's like, we could come to an agreement on this, but they don't want to come to an agreement on this. There hasn't been a single time has Vance ever said that we could come to an agreement. I agree with you on this. I mean,
I get
And then the one time he said
they're
he
trying
could
to.
on the
So they're
Family
trying
League,
to
which
set.
he's voted against every single time it's come up in Congress.
Right. There's things
They're
that are
trying to
there's
set
things
the
that are
stage
facts.
of. They're trying to set the stage of mutual cooperation between Republicans and Democrats,
Right.
and I respect that, but this is not the time to continue. There is a time and a place during this debate for them to engage in that type of messaging. But when that motherfucker speaks up and says some shit that isn't true, you fucking hammer him. You hammer him like the fucking fist of an angry god on a fucking anvil.
Well, the
I
last
don't
thing
even
he
know what
said was, we are miles apart on this, which is that he lost the election. That's yes or no.
Yeah.
There's no, okay, we could come. No, he said no. But, could he have been more forceful and brought the hammer down? Yes. But that's just not him.
But that's not who he is.
Right. That's just not him, though. So, I mean, I
You
knew
want
he
that?
would win the
You-
personality
If you want
debate.
that, you put Edmund
Okay, but
Kim in as the VP.
You remember when people were like begging President Obama to go off? They're like, just get mad one time.
Right.
And he didn't want to do it because white people are afraid of angry black men, and a president who is black being angry about a thing is going to like cause some sort of alarm or some shit. And I get that is not his thing, but that guy is a fucking sergeant major, and I can tell you for sure that if some random private stepped on his grass, that would be the end of that private. He would have fucking chewed that guy a new ass. There's a time and a place for righteous anger, and sometimes you just gotta stop it.
I hear you.
Oh, it's back on. I'll shut up now.
Elected to go last. So Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank
They
you to
flip a
CBS
coin?
News. And most importantly, Thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something, not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies.
Fentanyl is being sold
in
by the
politics
Haitian
long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until Election Day. Please get out and vote. And for all of us here at CBS
I want to
News,
watch the spin room because we know who's in the spin room for Governor Walz.
Who?
My next ex-wife, Representative Jasmine Crockett.
Oh, yeah, that sounds sweet.
I have such a crush on her. I want her to come up.
The first and only
I am not a sub at all, but if she were to come to my house, I would let her talk to her
debate of the kind. People mostly say they want. You notice here the two candidates lingering on the stage. That's quite a difference from the presidential debate, in which it was not even sure that
Lingering.
So I got an email from somebody who said that they heard a rumor that JD Vance's wife was filing for divorce. I must stress that this is thoroughly unfounded and had absolutely no citations cited at all. However, it was said. I don't know where they got the information from. I'm just throwing that out there.
Any president. Tim Walz made the
I think
case
it's worth
that Donald
noting
Trump's
I got an
temperament.
email as well. It said that I had won the Irish lottery, despite having not entered it or being an Irish resident.
Well,
and that if I
you know
just sent
that-
them my bank information, that they would deposit the funds right away. So I'm glad we're both getting our emails from.
You
very
know that
reputable sources.
the Sons of Liberty Discord and our YouTube channel has an email where people can email us. So they do, and they'll send us like stories and tips and whatnot. And then the Discord channel in particular has a breaking newsworthy channel where people can post links for us to like farm stories. So not that I'm trying to rep the Sons of Liberty Discord, but I'm trying to rep the Sons of Liberty Discord. So
there we are.
Administration. He talked about Donald Trump almost as the defender of the Affordable Care Act. Donald Trump.
anyway,
That was really funny.
so
yeah,
I feel like in that debate, Tim Walz kind of got off to a little bit of a shaky start.
Yeah, he was
Considering
nervous.
this was the first and only debate, but I feel like he kind of grew into it as
He
the night
did.
went on. I feel like JD Bowman definitely fumbled the ball on a lot of things. Like there was an opportunity there for him to like take first place, and he didn't.
I think it was a
Notably the
solid
January
C
6th thing, but
performance.
quite a lot of other things.
I think for
fucking
both of them had very much the don't screw it up, don't rock the boat.
Sure.
They were both not pushing towards some of the more confrontational things, some of the more extreme ends of things. They were both steering away from some of the more explosive material.
Like
if you will. And I think that was by design, is that they both did not want to be the guy who gives that soundbite that's going to be in the memes and videos for the next
For
couple
sure,
weeks.
they wanted to be supportive of the primary candidate and be supportive and not stand out and keep the company line.
I think for Vance, he needed to be a counterweight to Trump's insanity, right? He needed to come off as a fucking adult, basically,
I think he did a little
which is
bit.
not a
He did
real
that.
high bar for an
Right.
actual adult to do. And I do think he was able to achieve that. For Walz,
Yeah.
he needed to come across as a reasonable consulting voice that's going to be helping Harris with his experience and his success. And I also think he was successful with that.
Yeah.
I don't think that either one of them really got into the fireworks like they could have
No.
to really
Yeah.
make it like that first presidential debate was.
No.
I feel like Tim Walz could have definitely brought the thunder on a number of occasions.
He could
and
have.
The fact that he did not, I'm torn, because on the one hand, I thoroughly agree with their strategy of trying to kind of get Republicans on board by kind of being middle of the road and conciliatory. But on the other hand, there's a certain part of me, and a lot of it is rooted in being a former professional NCO, even though I've been accused on this very live stream of not being professional because I had my cat in the background. Anyway, I'm not at all salty about that. I just couldn't resist the opportunity. I feel like there was an opportunity for Sergeant Major Walz to come out and be like, "You motherfucker, you better shut up and stop lying," and just course correct that guy right there on the spot.
Restraint, definitely.
The fact that he was, that he was, as you said, very restrained. I feel like that's going to play into convincing a lot of never Trumpers and conservatives who are kind of like, I'm done with Trump, into being like, okay, well, he didn't go ape shit on us, so I could see like voting for these guys or whatever. So
I think he
I
tried
get
his
it.
best to say
I
he was
definitely-
Clearly a strategy.
Yeah, I definitely feel like he should have fucking laid down the thunder at least one good time to prove that he could. but I respect the massive amount of restraint that went into that. And I should note that I was never a sergeant major, so I don't know what kind of, politics goes into that. Where is Jasmine Crockett? Where is my next ex-wife? I'm waiting on the spin room to
I will
show
say,
up.
if you've watched any of Walz's speech during the campaign, he can get fired up and he can throw bombs.
Yeah, I think he's capable.
That's what I would have loved to have seen. Just one time to be like, here we go. I'm gonna spit some game at you and just fucking lay down a couple of verses, and then be like, for the rest of the debate, now that you know what I'm capable of, don't try these hands because these hands are rated E for everybody, and that would have been a sufficient warning, I think.
I think you just have priorities when you're in a debate like this, and it's the only one. It's the only time they're head to head, and so you have to look at it like, well, what's the long game on this, and what is the most good I can do? And the most good I can do is to say I can be conciliatory to people who have a different opinion of me than I do, and not I'm going to be a dick.
He did a good job of verbally communicating that at a lot of different opportunities, saying that he agreed with Senator Bowman.
Well, that was it, right? Because it allows Kamala to be the one who is the attacker, who's taking the jabs at Trump and everything, because Trump's the pugilist, right? He's going to throw insults and yell crazy things, and all of a sudden just pivot to the most batshit crazy thing you can imagine. So it's like it's okay for Kamala to be, in the boxing ring with him, but the VP, it's more like that's the two statesmen disagreeing on things.
Trump is less of a pugilist and more of like
the
alcoholic on several types of medication and several types of illicit drugs at the bar, who's suddenly gotten wound up over the song that's playing on the jukebox and decides that he's going to fight everybody and go off on random tangents about shit. And everybody in the fucking bar is like, what is wrong with this guy? Can we just knock him out with a bottle and throw him outside for the cops to get him?
Throw him into a snowbank.
I mean, I'm here for it.
All of it.
Pushing about not only his present, but his possible future.
Nancy, your thoughts?
I think if you took a shot every time you heard the words "I agree" tonight, you'd be at the table right now. This was an surprisingly affable debate for two men who we know from our reporting do not like each other. They said that they agreed on housing policy. They said that they agreed on some aspects of immigration policy, on pro-family policy. They were clearly intent on showing that they are likable, that they are agreeable for all the reasons, Cecilia, that you laid out earlier. The Democrats that I'm talking to feel fine about the debate. They're not doing cartwheels the way they were after the Harris and Trump debate a few weeks ago, but they think that this went well for them, and I predict that that exchange between Vance and Walz about whether Donald Trump lost the election is going to end up in a Harris ad by the end of the week.
Both of these contenders came to the stage tonight being favorites of the base in their respective parties. Governor Walz was someone who went on television and called Republicans weird. Senator JD Vance was someone who would go on podcasts with Donald Trump Jr. and other favorites of the right and say the left was essentially weird. Tonight on stage, you didn't hear a lot about that. You heard an approach to build on our colleagues' reporting and analysis here. It was about appealing to the middle. For JD Vance, giving reassurance to traditional Republicans, conservatives, that they have a place in this Republican Party, even with former President Trump. They might not like those traditional Republicans' answer on the election, but they might like his answer on the economy and on border security. And for Governor Walz, it wasn't about being an attack dog. It was trying to make an overture to that centrist voter in a battleground state and say, hey, with Vice President Harris as a teacher
a small, tight mouth.
Gordon, quickly before we wrap, one of the big issues, though, was immigration, so much so that they had to shut the mics off at one point.
Yeah, but I think the civility that we saw tonight may be a mistake by Democrats, quite frankly. I talked at the outset of energizing this base. I was just in Ohio, and many Democrats were livid about what's going on in Springfield. I think Walz missed an opportunity to really push the racial insensitivity there. There was a sense of trying to be affable, as John said. And I think what we're going to see from this point on is the civility being laid aside. And as we've said, from this point on, gloves are off, I think.
Major, you've spent a lot of time thinking about Donald Trump. How might he react to his number two?
So what Donald Trump will take away is the first third of the debate, where JD Vance made a very strong case that the Trump record on, was the world on fire, yes or no? No, it wasn't. Was the economy better? Yes, it was. Trump will be very happy with that. I think he will largely ignore and forget all the bipartisan appeals because they don't really fit within his orientation to politics.
Thank you, Major. There is much more to talk about. Our coverage will continue with instant reaction polls and fact checks. That'll be on CBS News 24/7. But for now, for all of my colleagues here, good night.
Where is the spin room?
Just one correction there. Walz did mention the Vance's lies about Springfield.
Making up
When
stuff.
they were talking about, yeah.
He
When we were
mentioned
talking
him
about
making up
Ohio.
stuff.
What do you think? I see money leaving America. Is this a battle?
You were taking notes, I see.
Black versus
I
white?
do have notes.
Well, I'm looking at the comments too, and I saw that. He did mention that.
We have comments?
In the
we have
comments, yeah.
Yeah, we have comments. I'm sorry, people in the comments.
You got to realize most of the comments are about your cat.
Are they? I was on screen for like 5 minutes and some dude
forgot
lost
about the
fucking
cat.
shit at my cat and your microphone. He was like, "You should try to be more professional." I want to hear the debate. That guy's still watching. Still, fuck you. My cat is over there on the fucking recliner sleeping instead of over here where he wants to be because you wanted to be professional. Such a professional.
I'm calling him out. The cat hater's going to get his own rant.
Welcome back to
these guys
CBS
still
News
talking?
24/7 for continued coverage of the first and only vice presidential debate between Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Republican Senator JD Vance. I'm John Dickerson in Times Square at CBS News election headquarters.
And I'm Cecilia Vega, and I am here. We are here with the very best political team in the business. We want to bring our panel back because we are joined by Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett, Chief Election and Campaign correspondent
Major
Robert
Garrett.
Costa, Chief White House correspondent
United
Nancy
States
Cortez,
Army.
and CBS News contributor Ed Gordon. Major, let's start with you. I was struck by seeing Governor Walz pressed on his biographical embellishments. No surprise that that came up, this question of where he was in college in China, whether he was there, whether he really wasn't. He sort of said, hey, I'm a knucklehead at times, that I misspoke. Is that going to fly?
It's flown in Minnesota, which was his point. People who know me best heard me make this knuckleheaded remark, and they like to be to Congress or governor. They've gotten along with it. America, you should too. And he didn't say this, but I think many Democrats, if they feel they need to clean this up in any way, will say Tim Walz will never lose an embellishment battle to Donald Trump.
Nancy, I was struck by something JD Vance said, which was in the reproductive rights section.
Mm-hmm.
He said on abortion, after hearing about the various consequences of the Roe v. Wade being overturned, he then at one point said there are a lot of people that should be alive. I wonder if that is going to be something that we might see in Harris. In other words, well, yes, the consequences of Roe v. Wade being overturned are not great, and then he tried to move on. But isn't that the point?
Yes, and I think that another challenge for him was that he tried to make the case. He acknowledged that this is a difficult issue for his party, but what he described as the way out of that difficult situation was to say, well, we need to be more pro-family as a party. We need to make it easier for women to have children so that they don't feel like they need to have an abortion. The challenge
And
is
no
that
other
more than half
information.
of the country believes
Yeah,
that women
and he
should have
votes
the right
against
to
every
an
single
abortion.
proposal
And
that
I
would
don't
help.
think it's clear
It's just
that
like
the people who
his
believe that
magical
are
thinking
going to
thing,
be
like-
swayed by, policies that are simply more pro-family.
Bob, what lasts here beyond the end of our conversation in terms of the man at the top of the ticket and the woman at the top of the other ticket?
For Senator Vance, he keeps his relationship with former President Donald Trump, didn't make any major mistakes that it would draw
guy
Trump's
has
ire.
no
I was
lips
tracking
whatsoever.
Trump's social media all night, positive about Senator Vance. And for Governor
not
Walz, he
usually gay,
remains
but
that
I don't think
person
I'd
who
wanna kiss
Vice
that guy.
President Harris can count on to go to battleground states, and elsewhere, and have a convincing personal story about being someone who was a teacher and a coach and comes from an everyday existence in Minnesota, ultimately became a House member and a governor, but came out of the education ranks and served his country in uniform.
We want to go now to Ed O'Keefe, who is there at the debate site. Ed, we just heard from our friend Bob Costa here saying that he's been monitoring President Trump and all signs a go, positive reaction. What are you hearing from the Harris-Walz campaign right now after this?
Cecilia, we're in the spin room here, just down the hall from where the debate played out in the CBS Broadcast Center. This used to be a milk processing plant, and it does feel a bit like cattle is being herded here behind us as Senator Vance is now in here.
Sitting
as
on
other
a
surrogates.
milk processing
So the two
machine.
campaigns are now here making their case. The Harris-Walz team suggests that they think he did rather well up against Senator Vance in a few different key moments. One, quoting scripture at that one point during the conversation about immigrants, talking about Matthew 25, the idea that there should be empathy for all people. They say that in their internal measurements of the actual debate, that viewers that were watching liked that scene. The other part that they thought worked pretty well and that voters watching with them or that they were tracking enjoyed was the criticism of the Trump tax cuts for wealthier Americans. But they say, and Nancy was making this point earlier, that final exchange regarding the future of democracy on January 6th was most damning. They say that exchange and Vance's refusal to say who exactly won the election, the fact that he dodged questions about it, is something that they will seize on in the coming days as a reminder to skeptics, to those concerned about Trump, that once again, it appears they may be preparing to question the results of the election and stoke concerns about it. Beyond that, there were, at the beginning at least, concerns among Democrats more broadly about how the governor sort of stumbled out of the gates a bit, especially uneasy on those questions about Mideast policy and what exactly the United States should do in terms of Israel's response to Iran. Some conceding perhaps he, like Senator Vance, should be doing more interviews perhaps out on the trail. In the coming days, remember, Governor Walz is headed to central Pennsylvania to campaign. He was supposed to do that with Vice President Harris, who instead will be staying back in Washington and attending to official duties in the coming days. She'll be visiting storm damage in Georgia, and then we anticipate over the weekend heading to North Carolina. So they will not be seen together on the trail as we thought they might, so that she can attend to official duties and he'll continue campaigning in that key state of Pennsylvania, one where, of course, both he and Vance were hoping to win over support tonight.
Thank you, Ed. Caitlin Huey-Burns is also at the CBS News Broadcast Center. Caitlin, what are you hearing from the Trump-Vance camp?
Well, the Trump campaign is essentially doing a victory lap. Quite literally, they were eager to come into this spin room and talk to reporters, senior advisors, campaign manager, and Donald Trump Jr., who, of course, is very close with JD Vance and was influential in that decision to name him as VP. But notably, I was talking to a campaign source who was heavily involved in this preparation, and they noted that there was in the prep a kind of conscious effort to focus on JD Vance's personal side, knowing that this was going to be an introduction of sorts to millions of Americans watching. And if you think about it, going back to when JD Vance was announced as the running mate, remember, he was told 20 minutes before this was announced that he would be the running mate. Then they had the convention, and the focus was very much on the top of the ticket and Donald Trump. And then came these interviews that were discovered that JD Vance had done, these controversial statements that he had made in podcast interviews and kind of other forums. They see this as a kind of a reset, but mostly to focus personal stories on the economy, which they believe is a deciding factor in this election.
All right, Caitlin, thank you so much. Senator Vance and Governor Walz made many claims tonight. Major Garrett has been fact-checking them on the fly and in real time. Major, you're going to start with opioid deaths.
That's right. And I just want to let everyone know, the CBS News Confirmed team has done an entire fact check of the entire debate. You can find those fact checks on social media, CBS News, or on our website, CBS News Confirmed team. I'm going to summarize 3 of them because they all touch on immigration, which was heavily debated in this process tonight, and the issues all run through one way or another, the conversation, national and otherwise, about immigration. Let's start with the first one, dealing with opioid deaths. It came up in the context of immigration. The claim, this was from Governor Walz. Opioid crisis, the good news is in the last 12 months, the nation saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio. The CBS News confirmed team rates that partially true, and here's why. Our country's only been counting opioid deaths officially since 2015, and in 2024, our nation recorded, sadly, more than 77,000 opioid deaths. That was down 7% from the year before. About 3,000 deaths in 2024, slightly larger than that in Ohio. That was not a 30% decrease. That was an 18% decrease. That's why the CBS News confirmed team rates that assertion as partially true. Let's go to the next one. And this one has been chewed over extensively in the campaign. JD Vance, Republican from Ohio, said, Vice President Harris became the appointed border czar. This could be a semantic issue for some people. We rate it, the CBS News confirmed team, is false, and here is why. That was never Kamala Harris's title. That was never her designated role. Immigration policy flowed through the president and the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas. What Kamala Harris was appointed to do or asked to do was look at the root causes of immigration in the so-called Northern Triangle countries, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala. That's why we rate that as false. Let's go to our next one. This is something that JD Vance said, again, in the context of immigration, housing that is totally unaffordable because we have brought millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. CBS News confirmed team rates that as partially true, clearly. And Senator Vance made reference to a Federal Reserve study that says larger migration to America in the Biden administration is one factor in housing stock shortage. But that was a long-running issue dating back to the Great Recession. Americans have been creating more new home stock at a lower rate than at any time since 1960. It is a complex problem. That's why the CBS News confirmed team rates that assertion from Senator Vance as partially true. John and Cecilia, back to you.
Thank you so much, Major. Republican Senator Tom Cotton joins us. He serves on the Judiciary, Intelligence, and Armed Services.
Tom Cotton, the fake
Senator
Army
Cotton,
Ranger.
good
Fuck
evening.
this
Good to have you
dude.
with us again. I'd like to ask you a question that
Look at his
that your
neck.
Senator colleague had trouble with.
Pencil neck.
Did
Fuck
Donald
off.
Trump lose the last election?
Look, obviously, Joe Biden's the president. He's in the White House. That's why everything has gone to hell in a handbasket for the last 4 years. But as JD said tonight, he's focused on the future and the future that Donald Trump can restore to America. For 4 years, we had stable prices, rising wages, a secure border,
Cotton is
and
a
a peaceful,
dickhole.
stable world. And over the last 4 years, because Joe Biden has been president and Kamala Harris has been his vice president, we've had everything going to hell in a handbasket. Donald Trump is going to bring back the good times we had.
Oh, how
Kamala Harris
folksy.
will extend 4 years of Joe Biden's presidency.
Cotton leaves out all the manufacturing jobs
that's in the
Trump shipped
past,
overseas.
Senator, but it is something that the Republican nominee for president brings up a lot. And the reason I think it's more than just something that can be dismissed in the past is when you talk to national security officials about domestic violence, they say one of the things that stokes that violence is the idea that the last election was fraudulent and that Donald Trump was the rightful victor. And so this isn't something about the past. It is a kindling of what, according to national security experts, of a present threat of violence. And that's why this is not something that's in the past. Why isn't it easy to just say he lost and now we hope he wins?
Well, first off, John, I don't know who these experts are you're talking about. Tim Walz tonight just like Kamala Harris has said for years, she wants to defer to the so-called experts. These are the experts maybe that told us we should shut down schools or put kids in masks. These are the same experts that told us that Israel should be restrained every time it gets attacked, as opposed to letting Israel win. So I don't know who the so-called experts you're referring to here, but I can tell you the real threat of violence that we see in America today is rampant crime in our streets. Or Kamala Harris and Joe Biden having 28,000 murderers and rapists
I told
who are
you
illegal
he's an
aliens
idiot.
released into our communities.
This
Or
dude.
for that matter, turning the
Or
other
for
way
that matter.
when our streets are burning, as they were during the BLM riots in 2020. Tim Walz being caught flat-footed.
Yeah,
Kamala
streets are
Harris
burning.
being bailed out.
Who was president again when those BLM riots are going on? Who was president again? Fresh memory. I can't seem to remember who that was.
Senator
back
Cotton,
in
Cecilia Vega here. One
2020.
question
Who was that
for
again?
you before we let you go on the issue of reproductive rights, which created a
Oh,
healthy
no,
exchange
don't
on that
ask
debate
him
stage.
about
We heard
that.
Senator Vance tonight say that many Americans have lost faith in your own party, in Republicans, when it comes to reproductive rights. He said, quote, "We've got to do so much better a job at earning Americans' trust back." Do you agree with that?
Well, I thought
No.
JD gave a very good answer on the way American democracy works. He said he has his
Still has an
personal
answer whether or
views,
not Trump
but the people
lost.
of Ohio disagreed with them. Just like the people of California are going to have a different view than the people of Alabama or Ohio. I think he respects the American people. He will
does
level
not.
with them in a way that Tim Walz did not tonight. Tim Walz signed a law that would allow a child born in a botched abortion to die on the table, to be denied life-saving care.
That's not what that
He
is.
refused to answer a question whether he thinks any restriction
I like
at
to think that
all
the
should be
magicians have
imposed on
passed the
abortion
fifth
in
level
the
spell
9th
that
month of a
says
pregnancy.
that
JD
Jesus is
Vance
going
was
to come
leveling
back
with
and
the
give
American
everybody a
people,
free
not only about where
Bible.
he stands, but about how
Totally
democracy
not true,
works.
but
He and
it makes a
President
good
Trump
soundbite.
respect the
So
diversity of
let's
opinion on
just
this question
make up
and
some
other
fucking
questions in our
off-the-wall shit.
democracy. It's
They're
Tim
going to
Walz
kill the
and
babies
Kamala
at 13
Harris that
months,
wants
and
a
we shouldn't be
radical
letting babies be
one-size-fits-all
born 9
solutions
months.
for the country.
That's just
Senator
unnatural.
Cotton
Everybody
of
knows that
Arkansas.
babies should be
Excuse me. Thank you
prematurely
so much,
born
Senator.
at 5
Obviously,
months.
the governor has a very different view of that law, and he said so repeatedly on the debate
state
stage.
is
Coming
this
up,
guy
we'll
from?
check back in with a group of
Arkansas.
Michigan voters to find out if any minds were
Are
changed.
you not shocked?
I'm not. You know what? I'm not going to talk shit about Arkansas. They finally got paved roads.
Bullshit. They do not.
I'm sorry, that was uncalled for. I just literally posted the video about let's stop talking shit about people's states, and I regret.
It was
And then
Arkansas
immediately
or
pivoted to
Oklahoma.
talking shit about
Let's
Arkansas.
be honest.
Hey, you know what? You know what you can say about Arkansas? Arkansas at least has a song in a show tune about their state.
Do
you know
they?
who doesn't? Maine.
Oh. I don't think Wyoming does either.
What kind of song is Wyoming? What rhymes with Wyoming?
Well, that's
Wyoming.
the first problem.
Wyoming. Nothing rhymes with Wyoming.
No.
Nothing really rhymes with Arkansas, but they somehow made a song about it. Arkansas. I don't know what rhymes with Arkansas.
Sounds like a terrible song.
Yeah.
You know, it was.
You mean Arkansas?
What?
Kansas, Arkansas, they're basically the
what
same thing,
musical
right?
was that?
One is slightly more fancy.
I can't wait to find out where
I
this
feel
is
like it
coming
was
from.
Big
Brandon
River, but I
Tim.
could be mistaken. Arkansas.
Someone in the audience, please help Admin Tim out of this hole he's digging.
I did actually feel really sad at one point because they were talking about suicides with guns, and that would be Wyoming with all the old ranchers pulling out the gun and offing themselves. That's been the number one, the highest
Or the number
suicide
of
rate.
farmers that
Yeah,
off
farmers and
themselves
ranchers.
because of the mess
Yep.
that the Trump failed
Yes.
trade war with China caused after he destroyed most of our soybean industry.
Yeah, farmers and ranchers
Notice
in
that
rural states. That
Rand
is it.
somehow missed that part in his talk about how great things were with Trump.
Yeah.
Kind of
I
forgot
know.
about that part where he gutted that whole sector of our economy.
Well, they talked somewhat about like how damaging the trade war was. I mean, in fact, that he called it that, he lost. Walz mentioned that he mentioned losing that trade war, but that would have been it would have been hard to tie that in versus, he wasn't as single-minded about tying in things like immigrants. Vance was able to tie immigrants into absolutely everything, which was, why he went to Yale, I guess.
I guess, though, someone, was predicated on him just being psychotic at times about
Yeah.
this is what the immigrants are actually doing.
I know. And then it's like, wait a
not in
minute.
any stretch
Hold
of
on.
reality is that the case.
I can see where this is going. It's going back to the
You're
immigrants.
doubling down on the anti-immigration rhetoric because that's literally the only semi-valid thing that they could possibly come up with, and they're gonna make up weird shit for
Well, it's
everything
very easy to tie that
about
in.
Israel and Ukraine, but the immigrants, god damn it!
Well, there was a focus group I was watching. I don't remember which station it was on, and they were talking with a number of voters, some on either side of it, some were undecided, and the immigration issue was resonating very strongly, particularly with younger men.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, the Trump camp has seen that, and they're going to keep beating that drum because
That's what they're
anything
trying to
that
go
cuts
after.
into that, 18
Yeah.
to 30 demographic is
Yeah.
helping them a lot, because that demographic they are losing substantially to Harris. But
Right.
immigration is resonating as an issue there, and Trump is being seen as better on it. So
Right. They're
you
trying to
should expect
tap
see
into
them
the fear
hitting that.
factor. The alienation factor, for sure.
Have we gotten to where is this? I want to find the fucking.
Where's Jasmine Crockett? I was promised
Yeah,
Jasmine
Yeah,
Crockett.
honestly, I don't know about you in the comments section, but I was promised Jasmine Crockett here. Tim.
I'm just hanging around so I can see Admin Tim's reaction to Jasmine Crockett.
Tim spent a lot of time talking her
turn
up.
the camera off. Is what's going to happen. I'm sorry, that was inappropriate.
Well,
I feel
it was
like I'm sorry that's
unprofessional, at
inappropriate could follow any of our videos or live streams, honestly.
Yeah.
Just
I
isolate that sound
know.
clip, just slap that on when our logo pops up.
Meanwhile, I edited them, so I guess I've bought into that. Edited the scripts anyway. Oh yes, that sounds fine. Tim, just go off here.
About what?
Oh, when you do your scripts and we just say, Tim, do your Tim thing.
Oh yeah.
Expected if you try to enter a country,
We don't write the
with,
Tim things. He does.
illegally, to be turned away. It is a mess that we have found ourselves in over the last 4 years with the extremely heightened immigration and families coming
He
here,
does have
children
great
being
beard
born
trim,
here,
though,
and then
not
what
gonna
are
He
we going
does.
to do? We've
He
got
does.
now
Like,
children,
credit
United
to him.
States citizens, and parents that are not.
I like that people keep
difficult.
saying that
topic.
the immigration problem has only
With it
happened
brings
over the last 4 years. Like,
criminal
this is
element
decades
here as well.
that's going
And
on, and no one being
coming
willing
from
to
other
solve
We've
areas
been
that
demonizing people
they
coming
they're
across the
from a
river
different
since
culture
at least
and
the
things
80s,
that
and
were
that's only
okay,
as far back as
so
I
where
can
they came from are
remember.
not
Oh no,
okay.
it
I remember.
stretches back further than that.
I remember
problem,
being a
to
stupid
our
fucking
criminal
kid
justice
making a wetback
Ellie, I
joke
want to
and
turn to
swimming
you
the
about
Rio
reproductive
Grande
rights because you
thing
said that was the top issue
when I
for
would
you
meet
outside of
Hispanic
gun
people and
violence
being
because of your
get
2
my
young
ass kicked for
children,
saying
as
stupid
well as
shit.
the economy.
How far
But
back it went
what did you
beyond that,
hear
I don't
when they
actually
were
know because I
talking
wasn't
about
alive.
the
I
issue
can
of
tell you it went
reproductive
quite
rights
a
that struck
ways
you? And
back.
you also say you're now leaning
My
more toward voting
mother's
for
father
Trump and
came here
Vance
from
after this
Mexico,
debate.
and he actually had to, for a long time, pretend he was Italian in order just to be accepted within certain places in town, certain restaurants he couldn't go to. Okay, back then there's a lot of that same racism in general, but
Yeah.
there was very much a pointed thing about wanting Hispanic people out, especially in the Southwest U.S. It was
And
really,
before
really
them,
bad.
it was in like the 60s and 70s. It was the Polacks. You remember the Polak jokes?
When we were
We
kids,
didn't even
there
talk
was
about
no
that
Polak
shit.
jokes.
And before them, I think it was the Irish. It was like the Irish, and it's like, who are we gonna fucking come up with next?
I like it when Tim goes back a step. He
It's
goes back
anybody.
like 1980s, 1960s, 1840.
No, they were making
Don't
fun
you
of
kids remember when the Irish came
Irish
over here?
immigrants
Yeah.
in the like the 30s and 40s. There were, and people used to put up signs on their bars that were like,
No Irish.
"No Irish allowed," and this was
No
in
Irish need
this was the
apply.
20th
Yeah.
century, like during the Great Depression and whatnot. Oh wait,
The economy,
here
and
we
a
go.
point that JD Vance made repeatedly, which is Vice President Harris has a lot of thoughts and ideas about the economy in the future, but his essential argument was, well, why didn't she do any of that during the Biden administration? What's the answer to that?
Well, she's running to be president of the United States, and you can compare the plan of Kamala Harris to Donald Trump's, and Donald Trump's plan is just a bad deal for the American people. His Project 2025, which, as you saw in this debate, JD Vance has to defend, and it's a unpopular agenda where it's going to raise costs for families $4,000 a year through this flawed tariff plan that he has, where Kamala Harris wants to bring down costs for American families on prescription drugs, healthcare, childcare, education, housing.
And let me ask on the foreign policy front, Senator, which is obviously top of mind when you look around the world at this precise moment. JD Vance's argument was there were no new outbreaks of war under the Trump administration, and that while he may, have some behaviors people don't like, that he created a kind of deterrence in his presidency. What's your answer to that?
Well, those behaviors that people don't like is something our allies have experienced during 4 years of Trump being in the White House, and he has rather effectively shredded some of our alliances, and we rely on those alliances for our safety. John, I was over in the Baltics and in Finland just about 6 weeks ago, and they're really concerned about November 5th. They're paying close attention to our election because they feel that if things don't go well in Ukraine for the Ukrainians, that they could be the next target. And they are NATO countries, and if they're invaded by Russia, and I think the American people know where Donald Trump stands on NATO and Russia, that makes Americans less safe. You know, our kids, for some people, their grandkids could wind up in a conflict in Europe, and that isn't good for anybody. It's not good for Europe, our allies. It's not good for not good for us.
Much of tonight was about these two candidates introducing themselves to America. Governor Walz has now admitted to misspeaking a few times about his biography, even tonight called himself a knucklehead for it. How should Americans interpret what he said about his past and how he is chalking it up to misspeaking?
Well, I think he was talking about a date, whether it was June, July, or August in 1989, which is, by my math, is 35 years ago. I don't think it's something the American people care about.
Senator Mark Haley of Arizona, we thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me on.
Our elections and surveys unit got an instant reaction to the debate, and so let's head over to Anthony Salvanto with the results.
Hey there, John. We did indeed nationally representative sample of people who watched the debate tonight, and the tone, they told us, was overwhelmingly positive. Almost 9 in 10 said that it was. And then we asked, of course, who do you think did the better job? Who do you think won? And that was effectively even. It was 42 Vance, 41 Walz, and 17% a tie. So look, this was very even, but what's underpinning that was that people told us that each of the candidates they thought was reasonable, number one. And then number two, another thing I noticed, John, was that the favorable ratings for each of those candidates went up compared to how they came into the debate, was higher afterwards. So all of that sort of underpins this really positive tone that people came out of the debate with.
Yeah.
Anthony, thank you so much. I want to bring back in our team for some closing thoughts. Major Garrett,
I wonder how much
Robert
of this
Costa, Nancy
was,
Cordes, Ed Gordon. Major, I want to start with you again.
Vance setting himself up
they tried to
future endeavors after
introduce
this.
themselves to America. They tried to
Dumpster
answer
fire
as
comes
many
to a
questions as they
complete
possibly could.
Yeah, he
Are there
was
still
just trying not to fuck
waters
up, I
that are
think.
murky
I
out
would
there?
definitely
Questions
agree with
we
that.
did not get answered that we need to know from these two candidates?
Sure. I mean, JD Vance tried to find, when he was struggling with the Republican record or perceptions of Republicans on reproductive rights, healthcare, gun violence, to sound bipartisan, because he knew that was the safest life raft to get into metaphorically. Those issues redound to the benefit of Democrats. And Kamala Harris will take those appeals for bipartisanship and say, but they don't work with your record. On the plus side for JD Vance, he very successfully did what Donald Trump did not do in the first debate. Talk about the actual economic record contrasted with Kamala Harris and make the explanation that if you like that record, you might get a repeat if you bring Donald
Kind
Trump
of, but he wasn't very
I want to ask
honest
you
or
what I asked Bob
specific about
earlier,
it.
which is, what do you think lasts coming out of this debate? Now that it's happened, we go back to focusing on the people at the top of the ticket.
Well, I think both men did what you're supposed to do as a.
I'm going to mute that for a second. I feel like Vance's performance just kind of feels like he's definitely seen some internal polling somewhere that makes him realize that they don't have a fucking shot in November. So he's doing just enough defense of Donald Trump to not get attacked tomorrow by Trump.
I mean, someone's got to be
like it's loyal, but
Yeah.
mostly he's just kind of being bland and milquetoast. Because I mean, it's a high visibility event, so I feel like he's using that to steer himself into like a more normal section after this, after the fucking fiasco of being tied to Trump.
Yeah.
Well, I think he looks at, like with Pence, and that he's kind of become persona non grata for breaking with Trump within the hard right of American politics. And that I think he's trying to keep like the door open to moderate conservatism, but still establish the bona fides that he's the heir apparent to the far right movement. That he is the, when Trump's off the stage, that he can be the next rising star. I think he wants to, I don't know if he can pull it off, but I do think he wants to position himself for that.
I think one thing you absolutely can't do is say that he lost. That's like the breaking point. There's no way you can admit that and still be part of the continuation of the GOP right now.
Right.
They haven't reached that point where they can say that and not risk losing the crazies, and they need the crazies.
Well, it's because if they ever admit to any one of Trump's lies being lies, the whole house of cards collapses.
Right. They're still holding up that.
They're bamboozled by a con man.
Yeah, they still have to hold that up.
I'm still waiting on the fucking spin room. We're now like half an hour past the end of this thing.
What are we doing?
Potentially this election in these
I cannot go to bed
You don't
without
win elections from the left or the right. You win
Jasmine
from the
Crockett
middle, right? And the question
fucking
is,
anger.
whether they did that tonight.
Are you sure she is
Sometimes
on
it's
this
a base
network?
election. Sometimes you got to get
She
everybody out in the base.
Is in the spin room.
Sometimes
I don't
it
know
is
why
about
we're
the
not
Senate.
seeing it.
Base plus.
I don't know.
Base plus.
That's what you got to do. Base plus. And both candidates tonight tried to get that plus.
A big thank you to all of you here and our entire incredible political team on this debate night. For all of us at CBS News, I'm Cecilia Vega.
And I'm John Dickerson. Thank you for joining
They're
us.
done
Good
for
night,
the night,
Senator
boss.
John Dickerson. We now go live to the spin room where Jasmine Crockett is gonna
Show off her dildo collection.
And admin Elo comes in with the inappropriate.
Washington is
The
the
camera's
seat
not
of
on,
power.
but we can
National
still hear her
security,
talking.
foreign policy, global
occasionally the
economics,
giggle.
every story.
Okay, so that was a great show.
Yeah. All right. Let's
You
see.
gonna try to find the other place?
Yeah.
He's gonna try to find the other place.
Let's see. Spin room. Yada yada yada.
Surprised you just typed in Jasmine Crockett.
I feel like, is this it? Live from the spin room?
I hope so.
Let's try this one.
He is. He's been around for like 25 years.
People standing around, and I can only hear it in my right ear. I guess that's why we didn't do the spin room, because it doesn't look like anything is.
It's the VP debate. They've all gone home from night.
Hindustan Times videos brings us. We're watching apparently the Hindustan Times. This is a thing. Okay. Rock on, Hindustan Times. 7.3 million subscribers. Way more than I've got.
Yeah, I agree. It is kind of hard to imagine MAGA continuing with Trump, but those people are not going away. They were here before Trump. They're going to be here after Trump. Maybe not the exact same people, but that movement, that hatred, that xenophobia, that white nationalism, they haven't fixed that problem. So
I guess the spin room is not happening yet. So
I know.
maybe
Gotta
it'll get
figure it
kicked
out
off here in a
too.
minute. I don't want to read comments. People on there do not give a shit about them. I only care about our comments. I haven't really been reading all of them. So, just anything to tell people that are watching this stream.
Okay, good times. Good times.
All right. Well, I'm gonna mute that. So we played a one of our machinima trailers before this thing got kicked off, and I guess it actually did work. I wasn't expecting it to, but it ended up working. So people got to see a little bit of what Matt and I have worked on in the past.
Cool.
Hindustan Times.
Yep.
I'm gonna sound like a complete fucking idiot. I have no idea where Hindustan is. I'm presuming it's probably somewhere in like. Is it just like a region, or is it an actual? It's not an actual country, right?
No, it's not an actual country. It's
I know I could Google this, but I'm.
It's a news agency in the subcontinent.
Yeah. Northern Indian
That bowl,
subcontinent.
and I've had like 4 of these guys. So
a bowl and then 4 rippets. What was that?
I had like 3 of these, and then I didn't just smoke a bowl. I hotboxed a bowl, so I kind of went a little overboard, and then I had one more.
Just to seal the deal.
So I could Google Hindustan, but
It's just a region.
I'm not
kind
gonna,
of thing.
because it's funnier to just sit here and look like a fucking idiot. I guess I don't know.
To be on his tombstone, and then he had another.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here lies Big Sarge. He had sex with old Marge. I don't know. I can't fucking rhyme on the spot. That's why I'm not a rapper.
Let's get a freebase.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Freebase. I think it's freestyle, not freebase. But either probably could work.
Look, in your case, it might be freebasing.
Maybe.
Oh dear.
All right, so
we're
doesn't seem like
still
we're getting
watching
anything else here.
video of people standing around, and the people who are watching this video are watching people sitting around, watching people standing around. So it's like,
I mean, there are some of the news agencies do have coverage going on right now. Like
It's
I've got,
meta.
MSNBC going on over here. You guys can't see because it blocks out the screen after this distance. But
I love Canadians who are interested in our politics, like we're in a zoo.
I mean, it's that same kind of energy.
It's like a zoo. We know.
It's like a zoo where all the
I
animals
realize-
are in one big enclosure, and there's just a lot of killing going on.
I realize that lots of foreign people are keenly interested in American politics because of the fact that what the United States represents and what it can do globally.
Yeah.
For good or for bad.
It's true.
But reading a lot of the comments in like Facebook and YouTube and TikTok, there are a lot of people who dial into our comment section that are like, I'm from Australia, I'm from India, I'm from Canada, and a whole bunch of other countries. People just from all over the world are like really trying to make sure that they're going to have a future, because this election doesn't just affect us, it affects them as well.
It's true.
And like the fact that it's not coming from some foreign government, that it's people who are just average Joes just like you and me in some other country that are like, yeah, we're all paying attention because this shit could affect all of us.
It is
too.
affecting them too, because you see what's happening in those other countries, and it is affecting them.
Yeah.
I
And
was
not to
laughing
mention,
my
aside
ass
from-
off though to my friends in England when they had their Theresa May problem. When I lorded that. See,
Oh,
now
yeah.
who's embarrassing? See, you can
Who's
be
embarrassing to the rest of
too.
the family now?
Yeah. Remember
can be
fucking Boris
embarrassing
Johnson
sometimes.
Yes.
wearing a suit and he had like a bad haircut and like went ziplining across to some fucking political event, got off the zip line and then was like making fun of Donald Trump, and it was like, you're the UK's Donald Trump. What the fuck do you think is going on here, guy?
I still remember the open mic where it was him the president of France and the president of Germany all laughing at Trump, just openly mocking Trump, laughing at him because he's such a
And then Trump
where he,
shoves his way to the front of the crowd.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Like,
The
I'm
clip
Donald
where he
Trump.
pushes himself to the front at like the G8 or
Yeah,
G10 or whatever
yeah.
that is. I was like, oh my God. I was pointing it out to my kids and I was like, look at that. Are you kidding? So embarrassing.
It's a fucking child.
Yeah. And an ill-tempered, petulant child at that.
Tim, I don't think we're getting your Jasmine Crockett
I
fix.
know. I'm trying to hunt her down.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Might be time to call it a night.
Probably. And I swear to God, if I have to go to bed without Jasmine Crockett,
she'll meet you there. How about that?
No easy way out of that. That was probably I was gonna say something, and then that something was probably gonna be like severely misinterpreted, and people are gonna be like, "Oh."
And then we would cut that audio out and just
then
reuse it constantly.
Mrs. Admin Tim is gonna watch this in the morning and be like, "So, do you have something to share?" Look, you knew who I was when you married me.
As long as you turn the camera on, how about that?
Yeah, I don't know. Where are they located for this? Like, are they like in California or something?
I
Where
don't
it's
even
only
know,
like
you know?
What?
4 p.m. or something?
Where you mean where
It's
the
not 4 p.m.
debate
in
actually
California, I know.
was?
Right, yeah, like where do they hold this debate?
I know.
I'm just trying to get a sense of like what time it is locally where they
I
are.
think I wasn't paying attention. Let me see.
It was. I thought it was a battleground state. I thought it was like Wisconsin or Michigan or something.
Oh, well, that would make sense, but it says it's in New York at the Broadcast Center for CBS.
Okay, so it's literally midnight where they are too.
Yeah, if they're holding it there, which they probably would be if they
Right.
if
Well,
they're
they
in
don't
session,
have to
they'd
start
be
their
in
workday at
Washington.
6 a.m. like some of us on this broadcast.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that. I think
I
they're
gotta-
probably. I don't know what happened though.
I'm gonna be at work at 5 a.m.
Oh, Zoom. Ew. Sounds terrible.
Right. But it's worth it for Jasmine.
It would be if she were here.
My cat Mikey is conked the fuck out in the recliner behind me.
They sleep so much when they're little like that too.
Yeah. And then they wake up at like 3 a.m. and they're like, "Hey, guess what? I have this mouse that's full of catnip. Do you want to play with it?"
Yep.
Wake up.
One of my cats is like that, and he's so goofy. He makes these really weird noises too, and he eats the tails off of them.
Oh yeah, he hadn't done any of that yet.
Well, just wait. Yeah, but running around, it sounds like there's an elephant upstairs. It's just this little like 8-pound cat. It sounds like an elephant.
Yeah, I've got the 65-pound German Shepherd Dalmatian mix who has decided that at 3 o'clock in the morning it's time to sweep the perimeter.
He
I have
is
to
an
check
elephant.
every single room.
No, sir, it is not. It is time for you to
Doors
go
are
to bed.
opening and closing. 3 o'clock in the morning. Going up and down the stairs.
The dog sleeps all night. It's the cats that are the problem. For me.
I wish we were like a valid news agency where like some of us or all of us, the admin teams, could like go to one of these events and just like, "Excuse me, Senator, we'd like to ask you some questions from the Sons of Liberty Live. I'm your
Yeah.
host, Admin Tim, and this is my colleague, Admin Matt and Admin Elo. What are your thoughts on butt sex?"
And that's why we'll never get press credentials.
Yeah, exactly. I would do it like I would get the press credentials just for that gotcha moment. I'd be like, "Yes, I'm totally serious. I will ask valid questions," and then get up there and be like, "Boxers or briefs?"
I know. I don't know if
Do you
I
remember when somebody
remember-
asked that to President Clinton, like way back in the day?
I think I showed
That was
that
the
to my
perfect
kids.
opportunity for him to be like, "Commando."
Oh my god. I feel like we either saw that. I tell them this stuff because we watch old Saturday Night Live, or we watch the CNN series on the 80s, and then I have to explain these things to them.
Who's your favorite
That's the
Spice
way we
Girl?
work.
All right. I'm gonna call it. If we don't get Jasmine Crockett here in the next like 5 minutes, we'll go ahead and end the live stream because it'll
I'm
coming
trying to
up on
look
like
at
3
this.
hours.
Yeah.
And I'll just have to do like a reaction video tomorrow because there will definitely be video footage of her.
Yeah, I would think.
There's no way
all
she can't
Jasmine
resist.
Crockett reaction video.
There's no way she's gonna get on camera and play it 100% straight down the book. She's gotta cut loose. That's like her MO. It would be that like if I got on camera and were asked for my opinion, I would be like, well, in my opinion, the candidates played it fairly straight, and then just ambush people with just go off in fucking left field, just start fucking all caps ranting about shit.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like she and I would be good together, but also terrible together.
It'd be dramatic. I could say that.
Yeah. Dinner time at our household would be.
I can't even tell what they're doing in this video. Did they already do something and they're done?
So I'm reasonably positive that the section where the lights are is going to be like the commentators and
Yeah. They're
Those
still
are
sitting
interview.
there.
Those are interview setups they have there.
Yeah, they're still sitting there.
and
like,
all
set
these
up.
people back here in the foreground of the Hindustan Times are going to be like.
Is that what's her
Obviously,
name's
there's a
pink
couple of
suit?
camera guys, and I saw somebody interviewing Mark Kelly here off to the left side, but they've long since gone. So these are all like aides and production managers and
Yeah.
PR reps and things like that. And obviously, there's camera people and photographers and whatnot. So I haven't watched a spin room in ages.
And it
yeah.
shows.
We live in the Eastern time zone. See, I got an extra hour.
And the last time that I watched one of these, I was not smoking pot.
Well, depends on what kind, I guess.
Saw Kamala
Sleepy-
advocate for national
sleepy kind?
legalization today. That'll be interesting. Be interesting to see if she can keep the police union endorsements and such, because prison industrial system hates the idea of legalization. Guess we'll see.
One of my friends is running for the California State Assembly. I'd interject that. So I get the texts all the time for Kamala and Tim, and then I get his text, and they're like the only ones I don't delete. I smile because he's in my contacts. He's getting it made me think of it because he's getting all the endorsements. He's a teacher, and he's getting all the endorsements from the teachers' unions and he's in Riverside.
I'm definitely ready for this election season to be over with because I'm getting tons of texts as well.
Oh, I have so many I have to delete.
I actually have my mail-in ballot to file tomorrow morning.
Oh, well, good for you. Not all of us get to do that because people like Greg fucking Abbott. Well, we get to early vote. I guess that's good. We still get to early vote at least.
When certain mayors don't steal the ballot boxes.
I know. Well, we're trying to register all the students at the university where I work. So I felt pretty good because we had a class the other day where there was like 30 odd students, and almost all of them said they were registered to vote. So felt good about that. We have events on campus till next week when it's the deadline.
And Chief, it ain't happening, man. She ain't there, boss.
Well, see, I know I was trying to close up and see if I could see her in the crowd, but I don't even see her in the crowd.
We'll end the live stream and then it'll come right on.
Oh, I know. That's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to go live to her.
Right.
Say, damn it!
Wait,
do it.
This is going to be a loop because here they are again. Remember, I was talking about interviewing Mark Kelly in the foreground, and that's them right there.
Are you so
we're watching
fucking
some
high?
sort of
We've been
loop.
watching a fucking loop this whole time.
Why were we trusting him to do that?
I don't know.
Oh man, that is a classic mistake.
I feel like on the one hand,
time
that's an
Tim got
unfair
high and
question.
lots of security loop?
But on the other hand, I feel like it's probably perfectly valid. But it's not a loop; it's a live feed.
And we all trusted him that he was paying attention. And
I don't know how you can fake a live feed like this. I would be interested in learning it for myself, of course, to use only for good.
Oh dear.
Yeah, because
It's the
she's
live
over here
version of
playing
the
with her
loop.
hair. I remember this shit. This blonde lass right here playing with her hair as they're interviewing Mark Kelly.
Yeah,
This is definitely a loop.
Oh no.
But it's a live loop, so I don't understand.
Are they just doing it over and over again?
You know what? We're gonna fucking live inside the spinner. Let's click on this one and see what happens. Oh.
Tim Walz the Kamala Harris are fighting for the American people. When you saw opportunity economy, of course, at the end, with the disqualifying question about disqualifying.
All right, Chief. I'm going to case out here so I can get some sleep before the dog's patrols begin. Thank you. Everyone wants the show. It was good to be here. Hope to see you guys next time.
Bye.
Matt out.
Bye, man.
Bye.
One pass for circuits. Let's go, guys. One pass.
What are they doing?
Well, so far I see like 8 billion cameras and microphones.
Yeah, I still don't see her in that.
And then people are like trying to shove their way through a crowd.
Let all
So
those people into the room. Come on, guys. Let them in the room. Let's go. Come on. Come on.
Yep. With their signs.
What are these signs? Yeah. There's a sign for at least Stefanik.
Yep.
Byron Donaldson. So
Yep. Miller.
could you imagine being a camera guy in this? And like your camera shot consists of other cameras.
Yeah, right. Right. It's so meta.
Come on, come on. We're not going to be able to afford things in the future. We're not going to bring down the cost of groceries, bring down the cost of gas.
Oh, this is not a live video. This
No,
is
that's
posted
yeah. I think
video.
it says it's from 50 minutes
So this
ago.
the spin room probably happened afterwards, and we just got
Like it didn't go
stuck into
there.
watching goddamn Hindu students and times. Fucking loop. All right, let's see. What do we got here?
Oh no.
And
Pandora 881. Oh dear.
It's sort of like, you know, it's like a eureka moment of.
Oh no, it's him. Oh, isn't he talking to Major Garrett? No,
Who's that?
some other dude.
We want to move this country forward, and that's why JD Bowman was pretty upset when he got fact-checked.
Immigration is typically a harder issue for Democrats to win on.
Oh, here we go.
How do you think Governor Walz handled this?
I think he did an excellent job. I think if I had to, I would go ahead and add
Wait.
the fact that when given an opportunity to vote on the bipartisan bill,
what are you doing? Where are you going?
yes, he voted it down. So he can say what he wants to say on the stage, but at the end of the day, when we look at his record tells the real story. But when we look at Governor Walz's record, his record tells a completely different story. And that's why I appreciate the fact that he wanted to highlight what it looks like to make sure that kids don't go to bed hungry what it looks like in a state that absolutely trusts women and allows them to make the medical decisions that they need to make, what it looks like in a state that actually supports unions, but also understands the importance of trade. I mean, he has a record to run on, as well as obviously our vice president. Unlike JD Vance, when we check his record, it doesn't look too good. I don't know that I would actually pick out a winner. I mean, I guess it depends on what you were looking for. If you were looking for someone, I mean, they sat there and they agreed a lot. I mean, so, you know, if you're talking about substance and facts, for sure, it had to be Governor Walz. If you're talking about someone who evidenced that he went to Yale and that this is kind of what he did, then I think that he did what he needed to do on the JD Vance side, which is making people believe that he's kind of normal. But this is the weirdo. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, and we didn't see what we've seen in so many of those interviews that he's done, whether it's been podcasts or otherwise. We also didn't hear a lot of the crazy rhetoric that he knows doesn't play out well with the American people. When asked point blank about reproductive access, he said, well, we've got to do better about communicating. He didn't answer the questions. And honestly, as women are dying, we need answers. We don't need dancing. And we get answers from Governor Walz. We know that he said that he supports IVF, but we also know that he voted against IVF when given an opportunity to actually codify that into law. And so what I saw was someone who was having to defend the indefensible, which is his running mate, you know, when he was asked about concepts of a plan and talking about healthcare. You know, we've got people that are seriously concerned because while the Affordable Care Act is amazing, it doesn't mean that it's perfect. There's still more work to be done. And the only work that they want to do on that is repeal it as laid out in Project 2025. We also needed a little bit of a reminder in history as we just went through averting a government shutdown. The longest government shutdown we had in the history of this country came when Donald Trump threw a temper tantrum because he wanted to repeal the Affordable Care Act.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
I sent you a picture in our chat.
Thank you.
I'm watching a camera of a camera taking a picture.
She's gonna be the one that calls somebody a weirdo. Good for her.
So I guess I'm a fucking idiot because I didn't realize that we were watching a loop of a loop on the Hindustan Times that said it was live. When in fact, apparently, and this was at like the 45-minute mark. Going back here,
it was later than that.
The almost the 44-minute mark when she got on. And it looks like that happened immediately after the debate ended. So I apologize to everybody that we sat there and fucking bullshitted over a fucking Hindustan Times loop.
Well, it's okay because it was good that we could sit there and bullshit. Really.
Yeah, but we've been on now for over 3 hours. And
Is there anybody left? Is
I
anybody
have to get up
still
in like
here?
less than 5 hours to go to work. So
Okay.
yeah, there's still 65 people dialed in. Sorry,
Oh,
65
you guys
people
are
that,
awesome.
You know what? The 65 people that made it this far, you're a fucking trooper, and I appreciate you.
Right? I mean, and these are the people, we don't even know who's left from the page going away. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Right.
You're going loopy? Oh, we're all going loopy.
Yeah, if you like the new Facebook page, please go do that.
Yeah, show the love. That's the place we need it.
Sorry, I did not mean to burp in your face. That reminds me, I'm going to go edit the YouTube channel description because it's still the old video. I'm going to go ahead and stop presenting the screen. And
Oh my
go
God.
ahead and wind it down.
I wasn't paying attention. I guess I just thought somewhere they were going to be showing it live. So
Yeah, I did too. And
I just thought it was going to come. I didn't know. Oh,
that's what she said. I'm thoroughly fucked up. Let's just go ahead and call it here.
All right.
Thanks everybody for sitting in with us, and sorry for our unprofessionalism.
Yes,
Pats and the
we're very
microphone.
unprofessional. We show pats.
We did say that it was going to be a live stream of consciousness. So
sort of.
Now you know what you get.
This is
next
us.
time I'll use more profanity because fuck that.
That's us.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream, and
all right.
I guess we'll solicit people's opinions on like the Facebook page and the YouTube community on whether or not they want to see more live streams, and I guess we can talk about Patreon and some other things and podcasts.
I think that's a good option. I don't know how many more live events there are going to be since there's not supposed to be another debate, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, Vicky had talked about wanting to do like some podcasts about stuff.
We could do
she's got
basically
a couple of good ideas, and then somehow on Discord I've been talked into getting a smoking jacket and a pipe and doing book reviews in an obnoxious fucking posh accent, which I can't even really do. I'm gonna have to be like, thank you for attending Masturbator Peace Theater.
Masturbator Peace. Keeping it real.
Like, what am I gonna review? I read science fiction and fantasy books, and Admin V reads like serious books.
She reads actual books. I mean, books, other books.
Not that science fiction and fantasy isn't actual books, but you know.
Hillbilly Elegy, right? You read a Hillbilly Elegy and give a review of it.
I wrote film scripts and turned them into books. So if anybody wants to read my Western novel,
we can read bad books and give reviews. That's what we should do.
Yeah, No, I'm not putting myself through. Look, I've read a couple of romance novels. I've read fucking Chuck Tingle's dinosaur, gay dinosaur human. If you've never read Chuck Tingle, you might think I'm just taking the piss with you and fucking talking out of my ass, but I'm not. Go read a Chuck Tingle book and then get back to me on this conversation. He literally writes books about gay dinosaurs having sex with women and men, and it's an experience. And it's trashy, but it's also like super entertaining. It somehow. I don't want to read like shitty book. I would read Chuck Tingle because that's not a shitty book. But there are other books that are like Wish.com versions of Chuck Tingle, and I don't want to read that just to review a bad book because life is too short for that. I have plenty of good books on my Kindle and actual physical books that I haven't even read yet, like my Steam library full of games that I haven't even played. I would much rather do that than read like terrible fucking literature. But you know what? If we get people that are interested in our book reviews, then I will read whatever the fuck they tell me to read.
Suggest a book.
Yeah.
So we have veto power.
Give me some shit to read, and I'm fucking spending a week reading this terrible fucking book. And then at the end of it, they're gonna be like, "What's your review?" And I'm like, "You motherfuckers."
I've been reading way too much of the Project 2025. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, go read 900 pages of Project 2025. Read a book,
thank
not
you.
a fucking manual.
I get stuck in it and go, oh, not this bullshit again.
What's the new Facebook page? The new Facebook page is facebook.com/Liberty1765 official. If you look at the latest YouTube video that was posted to the page, the throat punch has the new handle attached to it, along with, I believe, the correct video, the correct link in the video description. The channel description I still need to edit. So, no throat punches in a smoking jacket.
You got to be classier than that. I don't know.
What's more classy than a throat punch in a smoking jacket? I mean, it's like, I say, sir, shall we engage in fisticuffs?
I say.
All right, I'm gonna end this stream because we just went off on a fucking 6-minute tangent. So, good night, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. You guys are awesome, and sorry for our pets and lack of professionalism. Fuck shit ass damn cunt.
Yeah. All right. Good night, y'all.
How do you end the fucking stream? I don't even know.
Leave?
What are you doing? I don't
Mine
know.
says leave. Okay.
Oh,
Leave.
in stream. You have to press